Play hard.
Get ready for the next battle. It's the phrase you hear in video games. Now that's taken a whole new meaning as the world is battling an unseen virus. But while most sports are still warming up in the new normal, esports feels like it never left. It's virtually, pun intended, persevering. After all, what else would you need but your console, a good internet connection, and a really comfy chair? Then there's the battle for supremacy as the country's first ever franchise-based esports tournament is back. The Nationals, with the top local players in Tekken 7, Dota 2, and Mobile Legends, bang, juking it out. And you can bet we'll hear a lot more first blood, double kill, triple kill, and savage streaks from here on out, as we find out who will take home trophies. That's the headline on tonight's Sports Page.
The hottest headlines.
The integral issue.
Who will join the pantheon of the great?
What's the outlook of the future of sports?
The game changers.
The history makers.
Stories that make sports eternally compelling.
Open the Sports Page.
The subject of esports is so encompassing and so comprehensive that it was not enough to talk about it in just one episode. So we decided to make one more episode, and with the Nationals about to happen, it's going to be another great show here on Sports Page. And to make things even more special, we added Aaron Atayde tonight to join us. Aaron?
Thank you so much for having me on today's episode. Gaming is something that is very near and dear to my heart. Ever since I was a young boy holding my Nintendo controller, video games were something that was such a special part of me, and it feels so amazing to see how esports has grown into such a huge, beyond normal from what we used to see it now, into a huge force of nature. And to talk to us even more about it and to dive a little bit deeper in even more, joining us on today's show, our special guests are Darren Vitog, who is the Nationals Commissioner. Also joining us is Alexander A.K. Lavarez, who is, of course, the Laos Playbook Esports member. Martin Mauts Viraya from Bren E Pro. Michael Hapon Magbanwa from Happy Feet Emperors. Danel Pica Lozano from PLDT Smart Omega. Rafael Vermilion Cueva from Signal Ultra Warriors. Kevin Rock'n'Roll Mando from STIE Olympians. And let's start it out, of course, with the man at the helm of it all, the commissioner of the league, Ren. The National Season 2 is already rolling out with the Tekken 7 tournament, which I am absolutely loving the coverage of and the competition. How is it going so far from the inside looking out?
The most important thing is we are glad we are back. With the support of our stakeholders, including the teams and the franchises, as well as the Games and Amusement Board, we are able to start our season this year despite our country, honestly, the whole world being under the pandemic. Pro sports in the Philippines for the past few months has been non-existent, so we are happy that we're able to make it work despite all things.
I wish you guys continuous best of luck on all of this, because it's something that a lot of people are looking for, competitive sports, and esports is the way that we are seeing it right now in the local scene. AK, let's head on over to you. Were there any apprehensions from the players or the teams about doing the National Season 2, considering that we are in a pandemic?
Wala naman po. Kasi nung una, dapat mag-offline kami. Kaso napigil nga kasi bumalik tayo ulit dito sa quarantine ulit tayo. So, tinuloy na lang ulit yun. Mahirap kasi online, so ibang-iba para sa amin yun. Pero ayun, masaya pa rin kami mga players kasi ito yung gusto namin mangyari. Ito yung passion namin, matuloy yung tournaments and makapaglaro, yung mahal na laro namin.
Okay, ako naman magtatanong. Si Martin Mauts Viraya, gusto ko yung Mauts. Dalawang questions. Bakit Mauts?
Mouths po kasi nung bata po ako, bulol ako, hindi ko ma-pronounce yung R. Kaya mouths po yung naano ko kaysa sa Marts.
Ayun, may history pala. Pero dinala mo na yung pangalan mo na yan sa paglalaro at sa involvement mo sa esports. Ano bang player ka ba o parang boses caster ang dating mo eh?
Ano po, player and coach po ako sa Brand Esports.
And so, ng level of competition ba naapektuhan nitong pandemic o lalong gumaling ang mga player?
Nung pandemic po, bale, since iba po yung environment, since online po yung the nationals ngayon, parang it's a different game din po than offline. Naghanda po talaga yung players for this season's nationals dahil magkaiba talaga yung makikita nyo yung magkaibang gameplay kaysa sa offline Tekken.
Okay, Tekken, favorite ko yan. Yan lang naiintindihan kong laro. Aaron, sige, ikaw magtanong.
Darrell, let's head to you because a lot of people when they see sports, they think of live fans, and now that it's not allowed in the games, but for esports, live fans are not really something that has always been there when it comes to streaming and all of that. Has this been felt? Is there a direct effect on the players psychologically that there are no fans in the stands, but there are thousands on the streams?
In a way, the pandemic may have taken out a little bit of that adrenaline element, if I may, because it's very much a spectator sport. Esports is a spectator sport. So without the audiences, it may hurt us a little. But the thing is, as AK mentioned as well, we do what we love no matter what platform or no matter what form it may come. Personally, I would say that it doesn't affect us mentally, but of course, if I'm going to be very frank about it, we really appreciate the energy of being there with us.
Hapon, one last question to you, I guess, in this segment. How did the pandemic change the dynamics of the Nationals this year? Alam naman natin na wala nga yung fans, but in other aspects, how have you guys felt it?
Siguro yung sa pag-practice, kailangan sa ano po ngayon, kailangan po kasi itong season na po, kaya paigpit kailangan po namin talaga mag-practice. So, yun po yung nakikita namin. Yes.
Interesting.
Ako naman magtatanong si Vermilion. Saan galing yung pangalan na yan? Napaka-unique naman. Ano ba yung history niyan?
Yeah, so if you look it up on the Wikipedia website, vermilion's actually a pigment made from mercury sulfide. So that chemical can be toxic, but there are also good applications for it. So I want to believe it's a mixture and balance of light and darkness, good and bad, which my character in the game kind of has both sides of. And it's also just a fancy term for the color red, which is my favorite color. So that's
parang intro ng Star Wars, so gumagana yung explanation niya. Is it important for a gamer to have a sobriquet, a nickname, or is it required ba yan sa inyo?
Back then, I don't think it really mattered as much because we weren't really as blessed with the exposure that we have now. But I feel like if you want to get somewhere in esports, you want to be able to represent yourself and your organization properly and respectfully. So you want to go with a gamer tag or gamer name that you can be proud of, that people can respect, and that you can represent well with. So I personally feel it's really important.
Oh, like rock and roll. Yan, pangalan niya. Timo, nangiti siya tuloy. Oh. Parang hindi mo panahon, hindi bagay sa'yo kasi ang bata-bata mo pa eh. Bakit rock and roll?
Salamat po. Kaya po rock and roll, since bata po ako dahil po sa nanay ko po, mahilig po siya sa rock and roll genre po. Yan, mga slow rock, pati po ibang mga music. So ever since po, nagustuhan ko po yun. Tapos since bilang Pilipino, parang tinagalog ko po yung rock and roll. So doon po siya nag-umpisa.
Yung ba sinisigaw mo pag nananalo ka, rock and roll? Hindi naman.
Opo, pero hindi po sa pag nananalo po. Pag may move po ako nagagawa na natamaan po yung kalaban, sinisigaw ko po minsan.
Okay. One general question before our first break, and I want to go back to the commissioner. Any special challenges that you had to overcome? I know you're so happy to be back. Anong special challenges that you had to overcome to get the tournament back, yung nationals, Ren?
We have to adjust into an online setting, because we cannot do that right now because of the pandemic. It's actually illegal to gather in one place, and the GAB, which controls the pro sports in the Philippines, which mandates the pro sports in the Philippines, is actually not allowing those kinds of gatherings right now. I think even in MGCQ. So I think for us, that's our biggest challenge. Thankfully, I think if there's any sport that will continue during this time, we are one of the best equipped to do it. And that's what we took advantage of.
Okay, there's still so much more to talk about. Aaron has a ton more of questions for all of you, but we'll take a break. We'll hit our pause button, and we will have a lot more to talk about, not just about your nicknames, but your sport as well. Yes, you are a sport, no question about it. And we'll talk about it back here on Sports Page.
Wala pang Minion Waves. Masyado silang excited dito, mga pre.
Tatapusin namin!
Oh my God!
Time for our sidebar. What began as a niche sport for gaming enthusiasts has become a global phenomenon. That's esports for you. In the Philippines, esports has been as unstoppable as a burning fish, and the interest continues to grow. In last year's inaugural season of the Nationals, Dota 2 games had a total online views of over 628,000, or an average of 13,000. That's on Facebook alone. And it's safe to assume viewing numbers will only increase. This made us think, what are the biggest tournaments in terms of views in esports history? Topping the list is the 2018 League of Legends Mid-Season Invitational, raking in views of 60 million. At number 2 is the 2017 Intel Extreme Masters with 46 million views. Not far behind is the 2016 League of Legends World Championship, tallying 43 million views. Rounding out the top 5, Crossfire Stars World Championship in 2017. And yet another League of Legends tournament, the 2015 World Championship, as gamers eloquently put it, IMBA. Tama ba ako? IMBA o IMBA? Tama ba ako, Aaron?
Tama, Sir Seth. IMBA.
Okay. Sa'yo ko natutunan yan. Sige.
My goal for the entire show, by the end of this, we need to find the gamer tag for Sir Sev Sarmiento.
Okay,
we
sige.
need to get that going.
Basta it has to be better than Hapon and rock and roll, huh?
It's going to be hard to top that one, though.
Yeah, okay,
let's head
sige.
back into the questions, and let's bring back Commissioner Ren. Sir, what is your assessment of the level of and quality of the competition this year as compared to last year?
It's as good as last year, if not better. I think, as with any other sports, the goal for the athletes is to adapt or not survive, right? Adapt or die. And being the professionals that they are, and being that we have some of the best players in the Philippines, I'm confident that that's something they are doing, and that's something that they will continue to do. So for competition, it should be status quo. It should be as good as it ever was.
Let's say that there's somebody watching right now and has always been interested in esports, especially now that Tekken is ongoing. What would be your message to them who's watching and considering getting into esports?
Well, we have to tackle it on a wider perspective, right? When you talk about, I want to get into basketball, for example, are you referring to someone who just wants to be a basketball player? Or are you looking at someone who possibly wants to be a coach or a trainer? Because that's something I want to stress. Esports is not just the pro players, it's a full industry. Each team has their own management team, their training staff. The league has broadcasting teams. We have event partners, operations, and whatnot. So it's a bigger landscape than what people assume. I think if a young player, a young athlete can show potentials and can be guided properly, I think there's an opportunity. But otherwise, it would be a foolish approach to just dive without any basis.
AK, kilalang-kilala ka na ng mga fans at mas lalo nang kilalang-kilala ka na ng mga kalaban mo. How do you do it in this type of situation where you keep your strategies and your tactics as fresh as possible, considering na parati nagbabago din yung meta? How are you heading into this season, and how has it been going for you so far?
Masaya po ako ngayon sa performance ko ngayong season, and yun,
Maganda naman yung performance ko these past few days. So, ang ginagawa ko kasi, syempre, ang usapan kasi namin ng papa ko, kapag hindi sira, wag ayusin. So, hanggat gumagana, tuloy-tuloy lang. So, kung gumagana yung technique ko last year sa gantong player, sa kanyang player, ulitin ko lang kasi wala namang bago ba't ko babaguhin? Ang gagawin ko na lang, dadagdagan ko na lang. So, if makapag-adjust na siya or makapag-adapt na siya sa galaw ko, babalik ko naman yung inaral kong bago. So, ganun lang. Para fresh lagi, pag wala na akong maisip, papanoorin ko yung laro namin last year. Gagawin ko na, maglalab ako sa bahay, mag-isa ako, titignan ko ano ba yung pwede kong options na ito ba, gagana ba to, ito ba, hindi. So, ganun yun. Inuulit-ulit ko na yun, iniikot-ikot ko na lang. Tapos, with the help of my father po, yung coach ko. So, ayun. Ganun lang lagi. Inuulit-ulit ko lang, aral-aral, nood-nood, and adap-adap.
Okay. Mukhang walang generational problem dyan sa pamilya niyo, no? Kasi alam mo naman ang buhay esports. May konting generational issues yan. Pero matanong ko si Mouts. Mouts, as a coach, ano yung hinahanap mo sa isang esports player? Anong qualities ang hinahanap mo?
Sa bilang sa isang esports player, ang hinahanap talaga syempre meron tayong parang basic skill requirement na tinitignan. Pero that goes beyond that kasi yung how teachable is a esports player. Tapos what is his capacity to improve? Yun yung mga tinitignan natin. Tapos yung yung dynamics. Gaano kaganda yung parang synergy namin as a player and as a coach, and him towards other players, him or her. Yun. So, yun, madaming factors na tinitignan, yung mga work ethic. So, pwede kasing you're the most talented, you have the most raw talent, but you don't maximize it. So yeah, that's also a factor. So there are several factors that coaches are looking for a esports player.
Sabi sa inyo, sport ito Pareho rin sa ibang sports. Ganon din yung qualities na hinahanap. Teachable, nakikinig ba, hindi inaaway yung coach. Alam natin yan, Aaron, baka may question ka pa.
Let's head to Vermilion and to Pika. I'll send this question to both of you. We'll start with Vermilion. At what point did you realize that, wait a minute, I can actually make a living playing video games?
To be completely honest with you, I never thought of making a living with video games. It's just something I saw back in the day. You'd see all these videos on YouTube of these amazing players from different countries. And to me personally, it just would have been amazing to kind of compete on the big stage with the big names. I never really went into this with the primary goal of making a living from it. My primary drive and motivation was just simply because I love the game. This is kind of just a bonus for me personally.
What about you, Pika?
In my case, this is slightly different because amongst us here, I'm the only guy who actually is by profession an actual caster. So when I started playing Tekken, I didn't think, just like Vermilion, I didn't really think that it would flourish into a career. So I made it a hobby, as everybody started off with. And then eventually they realized that because of my background in media, I could actually be a caster or an analyst as well. So that I was already happy with. I was already pleased with being a caster until eventually I was bumped up to becoming a coach. And then after being a coach, moving into this season of the Nationals, I became a pro player finally. So again, this is surreal to me, and just I would speak for everybody else that we didn't think it would be this fruitful as a career. And personally, I would say that it's something that I'm sure that kids have dreamt of, and they will continue to want. But for me, I'm still in a dream. I don't think this is something that would really happen.
Okay, I'll ask the last question before we go into our next break. Si Hapon, hindi pa natin... Tama ba pronunciation namin? Hapon talaga o hapon? Ano ba ang tawag?
Hapon po. Kasi ano po yan nung high school po kasi ako, sa malapit sa school namin, pag pumupunta po ako sa arcade, laging, hapon po kasi yung out ng klasiko eh. So, yun yung meaning. Kaya,
Okay.
Kaya nung time na po yun na yung sa akin.
Yun na yung nickname mo. Ayan na si Hapon. Si Hapon. So, ang istorya mo, arcade din. Yung may
yes, po.
Okay na hinuhulog. Doon nag-umpisa lahat yan. Ganun ba yan?
Doon po nagsimula po lahat. Doon sa arcade days na po.
So, balik ako sa question ni Aaron. Na-imagine mo bang pwedeng maging a chance para maging hanap buhay ito o maging international opportunity? Hapon?
Opo. Na ano ko naman po, naisip ko naman. Kasi lumalaki na po yung yung esports yung esports po. So para sa akin, sa katulad po namin nangangarap na maging professional player. Ngayon po is natupad na rin po.
Ayos. Okay. Pagbabalik natin dito sa sports page, Aaron, tanungin natin sila about the future ng nationals, where the sport will go. We'll take our second break, but we'll be on the other side of the break here on sports page. Don't go too far away.
Oy! Yung dalawang tank! Naglalaban pa rin doon! Yung dalawang tank nag-aabulan! Holding hands while running, mga kaibigan. Pero Renzo dito lumalaban si Daniel bumabakin. Eto na lang talaga yung ginagawa nila. Van! Oh my goodness!
For tonight's That's What They Said, we asked, what are you excited about the most in the Nationals? Boy Nunal, 88. Wow, pangalan pa lang. Tekken 7 fan here. Hope to see more intense action and hindi gaano lopsided mga laban. Magaling ang mga Pilipino sa fighting games. Totoo yan. Ralph Hernandez would like to see AK bounce back in the local scene after the heartbreak from the SEA Games. Jonas Bulawan, excited ako sa Gamecasters and Intense Games. I learn a lot sa mga analysis. Sana naririnig din ang trash talks ng players. Wow, meron pala nun. Chester Pajardo, most excited about how the pros will shape the meta. Casual players like myself copy and draw inspiration from them, and it's not just entertainment, but also education for us. And that is what you said here tonight. Aaron?
Thank you, Sir Sev. Let's head back to Commissioner Ren. There was something huge that happened in the esports scene, and that was when the PESO, or the PESO, is now recognized as the National Sport Association of Esports. What does that mean for you and for the league and for esports in general in the country?
I think it's huge. PESO being an official NSA under PSC can now gear itself up for grassroots programs. They are very important because we are actually abundant with talents, and we have to know how to properly nurture these kids. I have seen over my career so many talented, hardworking players who had to give up because for the longest time, esports has no future, right? It's something that was echoed by the players kanina, but it is changing, and I believe PESO will become a catalyst of that growth.
Let's head to Rock and Roll. Rock and Roll, thank you once again for joining us. One of the best names in all of sports. And like you were saying a while ago, when you do a really big hit or you get a nice block and you finish the round, sinisigaw mo Rock and Roll. There is a stigma when it comes to Pinoy gamers na medyo toxic tayo pagdating ng online games. How do you feel about that? Do you think that is true? Do you think that is real? Or do you think that is an exaggeration?
Actually, napakaganda po nung tanong po na yun. For me po, normal po kasi sa ating Pinoy na mag-react sa mga nakikita po natin, sa nararamdaman natin. Like in boxing po, pag nakasuntok po si Pacquiao, nagre-react tayo. For us po, we are very passionate as Filipinos, supportive tayo to the point na we really take it to the next level. I feel happy that our fellow Filipinos support each other po. But I would say, I would love to see more Pinoys to take constructive criticism po.
Ganda sana no? Kung may constructive criticism nga naman tayo. Let's head on over back to Pika. Pika, I feel how you feel. You know, I wanted to play sports. I wanted to play basketball, and I became a sportscaster. It's kind of like the same thing. So I connect with you in that way. When you have these kids that are tuned in, or they're tweeting you, or they're following you on Instagram, and they want to be like you. They want to be a caster. What would you want to tell them?
Right. Actually, every time I get this question, I answer the same thing. Each and every time, it's just love the game first. So regardless of whether it's an actual physical sport, whether it's esports, just like where we are now, it's a matter of loving the actual game that you're in. Otherwise, it's gonna feel very robotic. Most people just do it because they're blinded, or if I may, they get a little too flustered by the glory. So they think it's all fun and games before the real work comes in. So my biggest advice is to put your back into it as well as enjoy it. Because without the enjoyment, without the fulfillment of giving your best whenever you're there, whether that's a stage or a microphone, whether that's an arcade stick or a suit that you're donning, it's really a matter of putting your heart into it. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Pika. Let's close it out. AK, last question natin. Pupunta sa silver medalist natin sa SEA Games. AK, ano sa tingin mo mangyayari? Ano expectations mo sa season na to ng The Nationals?
Ang expectations ko po, mas mahirap siya compared sa last year. Kasi nagkaroon pa kami ng oras para makapag-practice yung mga players, hindi lang ako, yung ibang players din. So, nakapag-practice sila and may time sila para lumakas. So, hindi na siya, expect ko na maraming kakaibang mangyayari ngayong season. Maraming bagong moves, lahat. Kasi isa na rin yung naging online na rin. So, malaking impact din yun para sa aming mga players. And yun, ang pinaka-na-expect ko talaga is maging successful tong event na to and mag-enjoy lahat ng players. Hindi lang kami, pati yung mga audience. Yun lang naman yung gusto naming mangyari. Mag-enjoy yung mga audience sa panonood sa amin and matuwa sila. So, yeah.
Thank you very much to all of our guests that joined us here today. Thank you to Commissioner Darren Vito, who has been leading the Nationals, to AK, to Mouts, to Hapon, to Pika, Vermilion, and to Rock and Roll. Thank you guys for joining us. This has been Aaron, Josh Strike, that's my gamer tag, Ataide, as we send you now back to the one and only Sev Diego, or Diego Sarmiento. Thank you.
Wala, laos pa. Mag-iisip pa. Tutulungan ako ng grupong to mag-isip ng gamer name. But you know, how big is esports these days in our last look? Last week, we discussed the current state of esports in the Philippines. And tonight, because as we said, in one episode is not enough, we decided, let's talk about it again. And after its inaugural season last year, the Nationals are back to serve as an adrenaline-filled and action-packed showcase, which we need so much. We need a lot of action. In fact, esports is just one of a few sports that's been managed to bounce back during this awful pandemic, which we all have to worry about and be safe about. So far, so good. And the esports group has showed that what teamwork and coordination and cooperation can do. So in behalf of all of us here, it's been a great day talking about esports here on Sports Wage. We'll see you next time.